This morning, the hinge turned.
It certainly did.
Ooh.
And it was incredibly loud.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today is Saturday, February 28th, 2026. If you are listening to this right now, you have likely spent the last 6 hours doom scrolling.
Yeah.
You've seen the breaking news banners, the grainy footage coming out of Tehran, and the stock futures dropping completely off a cliff. The world just looks fundamentally different than it did when we went to sleep on Friday night.
It really does. And I think for a lot of people, the initial reaction to this kind of shock is just noise.
Yeah.
It's panic. It's an overload of information that feels almost impossible to parse. You see the smoke, you see the red arrows on the financial charts, and your brain just automatically goes into a defensive crouch.
Exactly.
Right.
Which is why we have a massive stack on the desk today. I mean, this is probably the thickest stack of reports we've had in 6 months.
Easily.
We have breaking military updates regarding the U.S. Fifth Fleet. We have confirmation of strikes from the Israeli Defense Ministry. And we have market analysis that is literally shifting minute by minute while we record this.
Right.
It feels chaotic, but
Yes.
our mission today is to do what the cable news networks simply cannot do.
We need to slow it down. We have to turn down the volume so we can actually hear the signal through all this static.
We are going to move past the initial shock and look at the structural shift happening underneath the headlines. You used a phrase before we hit record, actually. You called it quiet thunder.
Yeah, quiet thunder. The news right now is very loud. The explosions are literal. But the actual change in the global order, the rewiring of how the world works, is happening in the quiet spaces between those events. We need to be empirical today, unflinching. We aren't here to scare you. We are here to show you the mechanics of what just happened.
So let's preview the board for you. We have organized this deep dive into 3 specific layers to help make sense of the chaos. First, the kinetic shift.
Right.
That is the strikes on Iran, the weaponry used, and the potential end of a regime that has defined the Middle East for nearly half a century.
Then we have to pivot to the technological shift. Because while everyone is watching the smoke over Tehran, something massive happened in the digital space regarding agentic AI and defense partnerships. And trust me, these two things are connected. They're essentially two sides of the exact same coin.
And finally, the human shift. How do we as individuals process a hinge moment like this without losing our heads? Because the psychological toll of this morning is very real.
That might actually be the most critical part of the stack today. If you don't get the mindset right, the rest of the data just turns into pure anxiety.
I completely agree. Okay, let's get into the weeds. Segment A, the kinetic hinge. What exactly happened at 04.000 local time?
To put it bluntly, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated decapitation strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran.
And I really want to be specific here because strike is a word that gets thrown around a lot in the news. We aren't talking about hitting a proxy militia in a desert warehouse or cratering a runway in Syria.
No. Absolutely not. This is the deep state infrastructure. We have confirmation from senior Israeli officials, and this is backed by preliminary satellite imagery that's already leaking onto Telegram, that the strikes specifically targeted the central leadership compound in Tehran.
The headlines right now are flashing that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has been killed.
That is the current assessment from multiple intelligence agencies. The compound is gone. And looking at the crater analysis coming in from open source intelligence accounts, this was not a drone strike. This was heavy ordnance. This was designed to penetrate deep fortified bunkers.
And the U.S. involvement, because usually there is a geopolitical dance here. You know, Israel did it, we just watched. But that is not the line today.
No, the veil is completely off.
Yeah.
Reports confirm the U.S. participated directly using Tomahawk cruise missiles. They likely targeted the integrated air defense systems.
The Russian-made S-300s and S-400s.
Exactly. They hit those to clear the corridor for Israeli F-35s to come in and do the heavy lifting on the leadership bunkers.
That is a level of open coordination we haven't seen in this theater in maybe ever.
Not openly. Not quite like this. I mean, this wasn't a warning shot. You don't target the Supreme Leader as a negotiation tactic. This was an endgame move. It was a definitive decision to remove the head of the snake, so to speak.
We do have some casualty numbers coming in from the Iranian Red Crescent. As of right now, they are reporting 201 Hun killed and 747 injured. Obviously, in the fog of war, those numbers are highly fluid.
And they are very likely to rise. But the ratio is interesting. The targets were command and control. This wasn't indiscriminate carpet bombing. It was surgical, but on a massive, massive scale. However, when you strike a dense city like Tehran, collateral damage is unfortunately a given.
Okay, but here is where I get stuck, and I think this is where you, the listener, are probably getting anxious. You don't just strike Tehran and expect silence. The retaliation was immediate.
It had to be. If the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, didn't fire back, they would effectively be dissolving their own authority on the spot. They launched ballistic missiles almost immediately.
Where did they aim?
They went straight for the jugular. They targeted the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, and they launched heavy barrages toward Tel Aviv and critical infrastructure across the Gulf states.
How did the defense systems hold up?
Surprisingly effective, actually. The Iron Dome, David Sling, and the U.S. Aegis systems at sea intercepted the vast majority of the projectiles. But the intent was maximum escalation. They essentially emptied the silos.
I want to pause on the historical context here. You mentioned earlier that this feels like a rhyme with history. What exactly did you mean by that?
Look, you can't understand February 28, 2026 without looking back at 1979. Think about what happened then. The Iranian Revolution didn't just change local government, it completely redrew the map.
Right.
It created a theocratic pole of power that has influenced every single conflict in the region since. Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq.
So you see today as the forcible closing of that chapter.
I see it as a mirror attempt. Think about it. 1979 redrew the map via a popular ground-up revolution, people in the streets overturning a monarch. Today is an attempt to redraw that map again, but from the top down, via precision strikes. It is an attempt to forcibly unwind 47 years of history in 47 minutes.
That is a staggering thought, unwinding history with precision munitions. But let's bring this down to the ground level. For you, the listener, driving your car right now or sitting at your desk, why does this impact you immediately? Why isn't this just another conflict in the Middle East that you can tune out?
Because of geography. Specifically, the Strait of Hormuz.
The ultimate choke point.
The ultimate choke point. In response to the strikes, the IRGC Navy has declared the Strait of Hormuz closed to all shipping. And they didn't just issue a press release. Reports indicate they are actively deploying naval mines.
Okay, for those who might need a quick refresher on their global energy markets, why is that particular stretch of water so vital?
It is the jugular vein of the global economy. Roughly 20% of the world's total oil supply passes through that specific strait, and it is tiny. At its narrowest point, the shipping lanes are only 2 miles wide.
2 miles, that's nothing.
2 miles, that's it. You sink 2 supertankers in the right spot, or you scatter naval mines, and you aren't just stopping ships. You are stopping the flow of energy that powers factories in China, heating in Europe, and transport in the Americas.
And the markets are reacting to this.
Violently. Brent crude is already pricing toward $80 and climbing fast. But the really scary number is the risk premium. Traders are realizing this isn't a week-long disruption. If the IRGC is fighting for its literal survival, that strait stays closed until they are physically removed.
Plus, this isn't just news happening over there.
No. This is the price of gas at your local pump by Tuesday. This is the cost of shipping for the goods you order online. This is inflation rippling back through the supply chain, just as we thought we finally had it under control. When the strait closes, the world gets smaller and everything gets much more expensive.
That is the kinetic reality. Missiles flying, shipping lanes closing, oil spiking. It really feels like the old world colliding with itself. It's heavy.
It is the absolute definition of old power, fighting over dirt, over oil, over physical geography. It is scarcity-based conflict. I have the oil, you want the oil, I will blow up the oil so you can't have it. It is a zero-sum game played with high explosives.
Which brings us perfectly to the second layer of our stack, because while everyone was looking at the Strait of Hormuz, something else happened, something that might actually be more important in the long run, but it got completely buried by the war news.
The digital hinge.
Right. Segment B. In the exact same 48-hour window as these strikes, we saw a massive announcement. OpenAI has secured a major partnership with the Pentagon. Now, usually these press releases are just full of corporate fluff. We are exploring synergies, but this one was different.
This is the parallel narrative.
Yeah.
And if you are only watching the war, you are missing the synthesis. This isn't just ChatGPT for the Army.
So what does this deal actually entail?
We are seeing agentic AI systems crossing the threshold into classified defense contracts.
Agentic is the key word there. We really need to define that for the listener. How is an agentic AI different from the chatbot they use to write emails?
There is a huge difference. A chatbot is passive. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer, it waits for you. An agentic system has agency. It is given a goal, say, optimize logistics for the Fifth Fleet, given a blockade in Hormuz, and it just goes and does it.
Wow.
Yeah, it accesses the databases, it reroutes the supply ships, it updates the manifest, and it even issues orders to automated systems.
So it actually takes action.
It takes action. It closes the loop. In military terms, we talk about the ODO, loop observe,
Yeah.
orient, decide, act. Agentic AI collapses that loop from hours down to milliseconds.
So help us connect the dots here. Why do you see the Iran strikes and the OpenAI deal as part of the exact same story? Why are they in the same deep dive today?
Because it is the friction point between two eras. On one side, you have the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. That is the ultimate expression of old power. I can choke your economy by blocking this physical body of water. It is tangible, it is heavy, it's grounded in geology.
Right, it's analog. It's very 20th century.
Exactly. But the OpenAI partnership represents new power. It is decentralized capability, it is resilience. While the old world fights over scarcity oil, the new world is building an abundance layer underneath it all.
Explain that abundance layer, because right now, with oil shooting up, it feels like we are dealing with a lot of scarcity.
Think about it this way. If you have agentic AI managing your energy grid, you can optimize power usage across millions of nodes to make a physical shortage much less painful. If you have decentralized manufacturing, say 3D printing parts closer to home because the shipping lanes are blocked, you aren't as reliant on that container ship stuck in the Gulf.
So the technology acts as a buffer.
It acts as an immune system. The kinetic war attacks the physical body of the global economy. The digital layer tries to route around the damage. The Pentagon isn't signing these deals because they think AI is a cool gimmick. They are signing them because they realize the speed of modern conflict requires an entirely new operating system. You cannot fight a hyper-fast war with PowerPoint slides and email chains.
So we have the old system lashing out, closing airspace, firing missiles, and the new system quietly rewiring the infrastructure of defense and commerce simultaneously.
That is the synthesis right there. Geopolitics meets decentralized tech. And the winner of the next decade isn't necessarily the nation with the most oil. It is the one who integrates this new intelligence layer the fastest.
It is almost like the chaos of the war is the accelerant.
Wars always are. The internet, GPS, jet engines, they were all accelerated by conflict. We are seeing that happen in real time with AI. The constraints of the blockade will force innovation in how we move goods and energy. The pressure cooker creates the diamond.
Which leads us perfectly to segment C, the human hinge. Because we can sit here and talk about oil prices and classified AI contracts all day, but for the person listening to this feels terrifying.
It feels incredibly personal, let's be honest about that.
It does. It feels like the wheels are coming off. You open your phone, and it is just fire and rhetoric.
And that is a deeply human reaction. When you are inside a hinge moment, it rarely feels like a clean transition. It feels like the end. It feels like collapse.
We even have President Trump weighing in. He released a video statement confirming the U.S. role and explicitly calling for Iranian regime change.
Right. And regardless of your politics, just look at the signal that sends to the world. You have a superpower leader explicitly calling for the toppling of another government while the missiles are literally still in the air. That signals deep instability to the average person. It destroys your sense of normalcy.
So how do we restore agency? How do you, the listener, stop from just doom scrolling and feeling completely paralyzed? Because the temptation is to just hide under the covers today.
We have to pivot to a positive sum framing. We have to look at who builds during the storm.
Okay, explain that. Who builds?
The sovereign builders.
I really like that term. What does a sovereign builder look like in 2026?
It is someone who looks at the broken supply chain and says, okay, I can't rely on the global system right now. I need to build local resilience.
Give me a concrete example.
Okay, look at energy. If the grid becomes unstable because of oil shocks from Hormuz, the sovereign builder is the one installing solar with a battery backup. Not because they are necessarily trying to be green, but because they demand independence. Look at information. If the news is chaotic and unreliable, they are building small networks of trusted sources like this deep dive, rather than drinking from the toxic fire hose of social media.
So it is about taking control of the things that are actually within your reach.
Exactly. If the global supply chain is broken, that is a massive opportunity for local businesses. If the old energy grid is unreliable, that is the exact moment to invest in decentralized energy. If the old way of doing business is blocked by a war in the Gulf, the new commerce layer we discussed, the digital AI-driven layer, becomes the only game in town.
So the message isn't to hide in a bunker.
No. The message is, do not be paralyzed. The hinge is turning. You can either let it crush you, or you can pivot with it. This is a moment where small groups of focused people can actually move much faster than giant bureaucracies that are bogged down in the
It
crisis.
reminds me of that saying, chaos is a ladder.
In a way. But I prefer to think of it as a doorway. The hinge isn't just a crisis. It is a doorway to a completely different way of operating. The old wiring is burning out. That is what we are seeing in Tehran and Hormuz. But the new wiring, the agentic AI, the decentralized resilience, is coming online right now.
That is a much more empowering way to look at it. Before we wrap up with our final takeaway, let's run through the rapid headlines, just to make sure we have the full picture of the board, because there are a few other critical data points in the stack that matter.
Let's do it.
First up, airspace. It isn't just Iran shutting down.
No. We are seeing major closures across the entire region. Israel, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, and significantly, Dubai International Airport has suspended flights indefinitely.
That is huge. Dubai is the busiest international hub in the world.
It is the literal crossroads of East and West. Having Dubai offline is like having a heart attack in the global travel network. If you have cargo or people moving through there, they are stuck. We are already seeing massive disruptions in long-haul flights from Europe to Asia as airlines scramble to reroute around the entire Middle East.
What about diplomacy?
Split, as you would expect. The EU is calling for immediate restraint, but their tone is very resigned. They know the missiles are already in the air.
And the markets.
The markets are completely ignoring the diplomats. They are pricing in higher risk, assuming that restraint is permanently off the table. China is the real wild card here. They buy the vast majority of Iran's oil. Their silence right now is deafening. They are watching closely to see if the U.S. can actually enforce this new reality.
And lastly, the energy sector.
As we mentioned, Brent crude is moving north of $80. But keep a very close eye on natural gas. Qatar sits right next to the conflict zone. If LNG tankers can't get out of the Gulf, Europe's energy prices are going to spike overnight, right as they head out of winter. We are looking at potential rationing if this drags on for more than a few weeks.
Okay. That is the landscape. It is a lot to process. But as we said at the beginning, our goal is to move past the panic. So let's distill this down. What is the one thing, the core takeaway, that our listeners should carry with them into the rest of their weekend?
The world is not ending. It is being rewired. Yes. The explosions, the closures, the political rhetoric. That is just the sound of the old wiring unraveling. It is the sound of the 20th century finally dying. Your job, our job, is to learn the new wiring faster than the old one falls apart.
Learn the new wiring. That is the mission.
It is. Don't watch the fire so closely that you miss the construction.
I think that is the perfect place to leave it for this deep dive. We will be tracking the situation in the Strait and the markets throughout the weekend.
Absolutely. We will be watching the AI integration very closely too. That is where the future is actually being written.
But we want to leave you with one question, something to mull over as you watch the news unfold. We've talked about the kinetic war and the digital shift, but here is the provocation.
Monday, we ask, when energy choke points tighten, who actually controls the new commerce layer? Is it the nations with the aircraft carriers or the networks with the code?
Thanks for listening. We will see you on the other side.
Stay safe, stay curious.